cards. Everyone knows about how strong the anti-war movement was around the Vietnam War era. Husbands were being pulled out of their homes to go fight involuntarily. They were being drafted. The media was covering the wars in Vietnam very closely and showing the atrocities. And people were questioning the ethics and the morality of these wars that the men were being dragged off to fight involuntarily. We don't have the media coverage or the anti-war movement like we had back then, but I believe it's justified just as much now than ever. The American people, they aren't particularly war hungry, but politicians keep getting us into war after war, new war. I refer to these war hungry politicians as war hawks. These politicians, they know that the public doesn't want war, so they lie to us and they trick us into new wars. It's very unlikely that an open war hawk will ever win a presidency again, but they all turn out to be war hawks in the end. George W. Bush ran on an anti-war campaign. Barack Obama ran on an anti-war campaign, as well as Donald Trump ran on an anti-war campaign. Donald Trump went into South Carolina and told the people of South Carolina that he was going to bring the troops home. And he won by the record margins in South Carolina. After their elections, though, each one of these presidents went right to the war room. Anti-war used to be a partisan issue. The left was the anti-war party, and the right was the war party. This is no longer true. There's support for the wars on both sides of the aisle. These politicians that get us into these wars, it's possible some of them are corrupted by the military-industrial complex. They're receiving financial gains, possibly, from military companies that profit. Some politicians are corrupt by our allies in the Middle East, and they get us into wars to fight for our allies like Israel or Saudi Arabia. Some politicians, they actually believe that what we're doing in the Middle East is positive and is good. Whatever reason they have, it is clear that our foreign policy has done much more bad than good. Our perpetual wars, operations, and interventions in the Middle Eastern affairs are unjustified, ineffective, and extremely costly to America. Big changes in our foreign policy need to be made for the well-being of everyone involved. These war hawks come up with many reasons and justifications for our wars that we fight in. They say there are weapons of mass destruction that could be used against us, or we are bringing freedom to the Middle East, or they are harboring terrorists that want to do us harm. Our actions are rarely ever justified by these means. The wars are sold to us with names like Operation Iraqi Freedom or Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, but these names couldn't be further from the truth of what is happening over there. The Iraq War was sold to us on them having weapons of mass destruction, but that turned out to be extremely false. The Afghanistan War was sold to us on the fact that they were harboring the terrorists that were responsible for 9/11, but that also turned out to be false. most of the terrorists that were responsible for 9/11 turned out to actually be from our ally, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is currently committing one of the worst humanitarian atrocities of our age by blockading and starving the people of Yemen with our aid. An estimated 20,000 people have starved to death because of this blockade that is being supported by our military. Our wars in the Middle East are also extremely ineffective. We have no good examples of effective wars that we have started in the Middle East. We have great examples of failures, though. In Libya, we removed a horrible dictator named Gaddafi from power. After Gaddafi's removal, though, much worse people took over in Libya. We created a power vacuum, and all the worst people came out of the woodwork. Rebels are fighting wars in Libya. There's even been slave trading in Libya. They capture migrants moving through Libya and sell them at slave auctions. And this is because they lack the government that we got rid of to control this. According to a study by the Watson Institute at Brown, the United States has appropriated and is obligated to spend an estimated $5.9 trillion on the war on terror through fiscal year 2019, including direct war and war-related spending and obligations for future spending on post-9/11 war veterans. $5.9 trillion. Imagine what that could have been spent on here in America. The infrastructure, the schools, the welfare, or paying down our enormous debt. Beyond our monetary costs, we have also lost over 6,800 American soldiers fighting bravely in the Iraq and Afghan wars. In addition to our troops, many more innocent civilians have been wrapped into our wars in the Middle East and have lost their lives. The American people don't want war, but it is not a big enough issue in most people's minds. We need to make our voices heard and stand up to the war hawks. In May 2013, Barack Obama said, "Our systematic effort to dismantle terrorist organizations must continue, but this war, like all wars, must come to an end. That's what history advises. It's what our democracy demands." After he said that, we stayed in war for the duration of his presidency. Truth is, America is not only failing to defeat our enemies in the Middle East, it is destroying itself in the process. We must do everything we can to stop these unjustified, immoral, and ineffective and costly wars.